Weight loss medications have become very popular. We're going to dive in and cover the basics as well as natural paths to get the same results. You're going to love this one. You're listening to the Begin Within Health Show with Nate Slager. For more, go to beginwithin.fit/podcast, or to enroll right now in our flagship coaching program, go to beginwithin.fit/coaching. I recently was able to sit down with Dr. Jessie Haymeyer. She is the physician founder of Well Empowered, where she practices data-driven and heart-centered functional medicine. And she knows her stuff when it comes to health concerns like weight loss. She's very familiar with the current weight loss drugs that are available, and we are going to dive in today as we talk about them. What are we talking specifically about? We're talking about the GLP-1 agonist drugs, the names you might be familiar with: Trulicity, Ozempic, Mounjaro, Wegovy, and how they work. We're also going to talk about something that I believe is very important, is some natural options to using those drugs. Natural Ozempic is what Dr. Haymeyer is going to talk about. So here are a few things that I want you to listen to specifically so that you can make sure that you get the most out of this conversation, because I know I personally benefited a ton from it. First of all, how do these medications work? What do they do? We're going to talk about that. Number two, long-term use. What do we know? What do we not know? We will talk about that. And then number three, what I already mentioned, how can we naturally produce the same results, or produce the same results without the medications? I think that's important to talk about, because then we have another option. And even if you're somebody who has used one of these medications or is currently using it, the question is, what comes next? You're going to get that answer from Dr. Haymeyer today. Sit back, relax, enjoy. Here's my interview with Dr. Jessie Haymeyer.
GLP-1 agonists such as Ozempic, I think it's most helpful to get grounded in just like how they work. What do they do to the body? Number one, they slow emptying from the stomach, meaning that food stays in the stomach for longer than it would otherwise. And why that's useful when it comes to either weight loss or control of diabetes is a few different things. First, let's just start with the weight loss story. When our stomach is stretched, it actually has receptors in it that sense the stretch. And those receptors that sense the stretch communicate to the brain. And when the stomach is stretched, that communication to the brain is, hey, you've been fed. You're not so hungry anymore, right? It starts to engage our satiety response in that manner.
Okay.
Also, when our food stays in our stomach for longer, it's going to more slowly move into our small intestines, which is its next stop. And that means our blood sugar is going to raise more slowly, right? So that's the benefit as it pertains, one of the benefits as it pertains to diabetes. So that stretch of the stomach is, and the delayed emptying of food from the stomach in particular, is one of the ways that these GLP-1 agonists work that's useful, right, for weight loss. We'll just stay on the weight loss world, okay. Right? The next thing is they actually do increase our satiety hormones, partially by way of that stretch of the stomach, but also in other ways. They help us feel satisfied. They help us feel like we've just been fed, right? So when you feel fed, you're less likely to eat more. And then in tandem with that, they decrease our hunger hormones. So that's like a match made in heaven. Increased satiety, decreased hunger. You don't want to eat as much, right? So that for a lot of people is ultimately when you hear people say like, "Oh my gosh, so much less food noise." Well, there you go, right? That's at least some of the ways these are working. And then they also work by stabilizing our blood sugar. So, we're helping our body produce insulin, which then helps carry our carbs out of the bloodstream, which means our blood sugar is going to be a little more stable over time with the same amount of food taken in. But obviously, people are taking in less food, so it's even more advantageous.
Mm-hmm.
So, the four big ways we're going to talk about are, slowing of food emptying from our stomach, increased satiety, decreased hunger, and then that stabilization of blood sugar. Those are the four things that I really focus on when I think about how these GLP-1 agonists work.
Okay. Wow. So that sounds like a lot to get from one drug.
Yes, yes.
So and these are natural biological processes that are being manipulated or assisted. How is that how does that work?
Well, I mean, when you say how does that work, like how does that work biopharmacologically speaking? That would be a rabbit hole I'm not prepared to
Okay.
go
All
down,
right.
but
I got it. Thank you.
but I can tell you, for each of these four things that we're talking about here, we do have natural ways of, you know, engaging these different mechanisms, right? We do have natural ways of slowing
Okay.
food from emptying
Gotcha.
from your stomach and natural ways of increasing satiety and lowering hunger hormones and stabilizing our blood sugar. So, I certainly, I'm not here to say no one should be on Ozempic or Wegovy or Manjaro or whatever the GLP du jour is, right? I'm definitely not here to say that. I actually do think there's a time and place for these medications. And I believe there are a lot of people who are on them who could actually produce and sustain outcomes if they had a little more information and a little more assistance in making changes that
Okay.
meaningfully impact their health, right?
Yes.
Because one of the problems is, I'm sure Nate, right, is with these medications is when people go off of them, mostly the benefits are short lived. Mostly, not entirely, but mostly, people gain the weight back. And part of it is largely because they haven't really learned anything new about how to fuel their body such that they're not hungry,
Gotcha.
such that their blood sugar is stable and they don't have cravings, right? And so, if we kind of talk through, okay, what are
Yeah.
different ways people could achieve these same outcomes naturally? And like, listen, even if you are someone who's on one of these right now, you can start integrating these into your life, right? I do work with people who are, looking for, I like to call it the Ozempic off ramp, right? People who have
Yeah.
been on Ozempic, maybe they've had a great experience and ultimately they see a future where they're able to maintain the results while being off Ozempic. Well, they'll come see me and we'll work through this, naturally as well as they move towards that future.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I guess I was more for listeners wondering, if I'm your patient, I'm saying, Doc, okay, what's actually happening inside my body? Is this a hormone that's supplementing my own hormones? Is this dulling
Mm-hmm.
the receptors of my hormones? How
Mm-hmm.
is this making all that, those four things you mentioned? What's happening for me?
Yeah, well, GLP-1 is glucagon-like peptides. So peptides are, they're smaller than amino acids. Anything less than 40 is called a peptide. And I'm sorry, they're smaller than proteins. Anything less than an amino acid chain of 40 is called a peptide. So these peptides are, yes, they're hormones that communicate to the body.
Okay.
In the way of, does it dull the sensitivity of your own, like if you get off Ozempic, are you therefore left producing less GLP-1? I don't believe so, but I quite honestly haven't looked at the research on
Okay.
that. But I don't think so. I think peptides are usually pretty safe on that
Got it.
front versus, full on, if you're taking like a biological hormone of sorts, that can have a different impact.
Got it. Okay. Good. Good to know.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
well, here's another question I had that just popped up. Um, uh, are there outside of the cost, long-term side effects or anything that would discourage me from saying, I want to be on this forever? This is working great. Let me just keep taking it.
Yeah, well, yes, and so I think it's always important to balance this in looking at the full picture for the individual in front of
Yeah.
us. Um, so in the way of like, okay, what are some known cons of these medications, right? There are things related to digestive distress, whether it's constipation, diarrhea, um, nausea, those things. For some people, those go
Okay.
away. For some people, those don't. Nutrient deficiencies, that's a big thing I'm seeing, right? When I'm working with people who are either on Ozempic and, or the like, and happily on it, right? Have no intention of getting off of it, or they're looking for their off ramp. In either one of those situations, we're doing a really thorough assessment of nutrient deficiencies because they're really quite common.
Okay.
Everywhere from iron to magnesium to zinc to omega-3 fatty acids, some really important things. And so we don't want to just, cross our fingers, and we also don't want to throw the kitchen sink at someone. We want to really understand, are there nutrients they're deficient in? So we
Okay.
would want to test those. In the long-term nutrient deficiencies, I mean, the consequences are many, right, and
Right.
varied. So that's a whole world. Lot in the way of experience, some of the people who I've worked with who are on one of these GLP-1s talk about loss of all cravings, right? Meaning
Okay.
that they don't crave food, but they also don't crave sex, and they also don't crave activities that formerly were a great source of joy, whether that's,
Okay.
doing some kind of sport or playing a game online or being with friends and family, right? So for some
Huh.
people, that's, an experiential side effect.
Wow.
Increased risk of pancreatitis. That's, people would know of. That wouldn't be a silent thing. That would be very obvious, and anyone who's on a GLP-1, they should be
Okay.
warned about that. There is some conversation about increased risk of thyroid tumors. And, to me, with these in the way of long-term use, the biggest thing is the unknowable unknowns, right? We just haven't had
Sure.
masses of people on these medications for decade over decade,
Hmm.
20, 30, 40 years. So these unknowable unknowns, like most things, it'll probably be a good thing for some and not a great thing for others, right? I think it's unreasonable to believe that all we're going to find out is good things.
Sure.
It hasn't yet been the case. So I have no
Okay.
reason to think it's true with these. And of course, for certain people, it will be the better choice
Okay.
being on these versus doing nothing.
Sure.
So yeah.
Well, I
I
appreciate your
and
balanced approach there. That's
Yeah.
great. Could we, okay, let's talk about the off ramp. I know, I'm working with individuals. We talked before we kind of started our interview that have used GLP-1 agonist
Mhm.
medications. What do you recommend for those that have to kind of transition away from them?
Yeah, well, so firstly, I would say like, getting your nutrients restored. That's the first step because with low nutrients, nothing works well when you're deficient.
Hmm.
Nutrients play an essential role. Our vitamins and minerals play an essential role in our enzymes functioning well. So restoring any nutrient deficiencies is step one before you even, do anything else. Step two, I would say, is starting to learn how to check the box for each of these ways GLPs work naturally,
Okay.
right? So slowing the emptying of your stomach, yeah, that is actually something that's useful to do. But we have different ways we can do that. We can do that. My favorite way personally is with fiber, right? So when we consume fiber rich foods, okay, you can take supplements, but why not eat food, right? So fiber rich foods are going to do the same thing. They're going to slow the emptying of foods from your stomach. And that's true whether it's something like lentils or beans or vegetables or artichokes or, like all these wonderful options for foods.
Nice.
Um, there is a supplement called glutamine that also slows the emptying of food from the stomach. And so, from a supplement standpoint, that's a possible way of proceeding.
Okay.
But the big winner there I love to bring in is fiber for that.
Nice. Nice. Oh, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have, I mean, I guess in my experience, when we start talking about fiber, most people are like, I have no idea where to get it, how to consume it. And when a lot of people are, hey, how many veggies you eat a day? And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
some days I have one. Um, is there a target that you found as far as, and I'm maybe this is getting in the weeds a little bit, but like grams per day for
No.
the average adult? Like, is it 30 somewhere
Hey,
in
yeah, no,
there?
you're totally spot on, Nate. No, what gets measured gets managed. So I'm all about the numbers. Yeah. So 30 to 40 grams of fiber a day. And now for anyone listening, like if you are currently getting between 2 and 3 and you try and ramp it up, you're going to be in a world of hurt. Like, do not do that, please. Right. Um, Nate's laughing because he like knew what
I
was coming
smiled
out of
as
my
soon as he
mouth.
said, "No, anyone
Right.
listening, I knew it
Exactly.
was gonna
Yeah.
be don't
Yeah.
do it
Yeah.
all in
Yeah.
one day."
Exactly. Like slow little increments there. Yes. So, ways you can do that is, yeah, like first of all, just start to familiarize yourself with what, okay, first of all, I would consider decent fiber being 3 grams or more per serving, 5 grams or
Okay.
more. And I'm like doing the happy dance, but three
Okay.
grams or more, we like that. So something like, a simple way you could start to up your fiber would be doing black rice instead of white or brown rice. Black rice, and I don't mean wild rice, I mean black rice, also called forbidden rice, sometimes called purple rice, all of those different variations. That's about 3 grams of fiber per serving. Most people do just fine with that amount, right? So making that little swap would be a great place to start. Other
Nice.
places you could begin to dance a little more with fiber might be, okay, maybe you have oatmeal once in a while, right? That's a nice little boost of fiber. Maybe you make something and you bring in flax meal or chia seeds, another great boost of fiber. So just kind of looking at, I'm a big fan of starting where you are. So some of you will be, are listening to this and like you're masters of the fiber world, which is great. And while others of you, just haven't yet given this attention, totally fine. But, starting to get familiar with the amounts of fiber in different foods and
Mhm.
starting to, kind of increase the amount you're bringing in. I love bean pasta too. That's kind of like a crowd pleaser on the fiber front, right? Because
Yes.
pasta's easy. Bean pasta actually tastes really good. I once served it to my nephews when they were like 4 and 6 and they didn't even know. So if it passed the test with them, it's good. So bean
Nice.
pasta can be like a nice little hack for like playing with a little more fiber without, really getting fully to that 30 plus grams a day.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Okay. So more fiber.
Yeah.
And that's obviously going to affect things downstream,
A
if I could
hundred
say that.
percent. Yes, that more right, literally, right? Well, it's true, right? It's going to help your digestion, and if it doesn't, then that's telling you something, right? If you actually are like, oh my gosh, I'm ungodly bloated, even with just a little boost, or I'm actually constipated and I wasn't before, it's all telling you something, telling us
Mhm.
something anyway. So, if that's true for you, my encouragement is to seek out care because I start to think about SIBO, small intestinal bacterial
Mhm.
overgrowth, or challenges with FODMAP. So there are some nuances to these things, is what I'm really
Sure.
pointing to there.
Yeah.
But
No.
like the nice thing about that fiber, Nate, is that it also is one of the key ways we can increase our satiety hormones, right? Increased fiber increases satiety hormones by way of stretching our stomach, also by way of slowing the release of food into our small intestines. So we've got a few different points of leverage there. Sufficient sleep, interestingly enough, also increases our satiety hormones. So, for those of you who, are tend to skimp on sleep a little bit, that is actually a really great point of leverage for helping your brain get the message that you have been well fed.
Nice. Huh. I know what just popped into my head is as we were just chatting before we started the interview, was you say you have your clients track. I would imagine sleep is one of the big things then.
100%, 100%. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have people track, and it's so, listen, for all of us, right? Some things come more easily than others. And
Mhm.
so, for some people, it's like, oh my gosh, I've always prioritized sleep, forever and ever. And to those people, I'm like, wow, I'm impressed. I know that hasn't been true for me, right? And then for others, it's like, oh, it really takes something to wind down and get off their phone and put away the computer and turn it all off and go to sleep, right? And so one of the things I'll have people do is we come up with their own personal game, right? Because again, we want to start where you are. So I have a woman who, yes, of course, I'd love her to get 7 or 8 hours of sleep at night. That's not where she is, right? So she actually, every time she gets at least 7 hours in a given night, she fills the box green. And if she doesn't, she fills the box red, right? So we're just kind of dancing, moving towards more green than red. And the important thing to me in this like health journey is, you know, um, improvement. We're
Mhm.
moving in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice. So fiber, sleep. As you practice
Mm-hmm.
functional healthcare, is there any other, maybe like one other thing or a couple things that you're just like always like, hey, this is going to make a big difference for you?
Well, yeah. I mean, if we just look at stabilizing your blood sugar as a whole, right? So eating for stable blood sugar, that checks so many boxes. If anyone was to take on, if anyone was to take on one thing that would meaningfully and measurably impact so many different areas of their life, from satiety to mood to focus, you know, uh, there are just so many things I would beside, and then we can look at lab numbers, right? For a whole other world, but practicing and mastering keep eating for blood sugar stability, that would be the thing I would put number one on the to-do list.
Okay, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank
Mm-hmm.
you. And I hate even wrapping this conversation up because it's been great. Could you tell us a little bit about what you're doing day to day and how people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work with people exclusively remotely. And so if you're interested in connecting, please hop on my website, Well Empowered, WELLEMPOWERED.com, and schedule a complimentary consultation. And, I invite you to schedule that consult, whether you're interested in working together or if you just like to connect and chat, that is wonderful as well. You can also go to wellempowered.com/dare and sign up to receive our weekly dares. I send out a dare every Sunday to everyone that is inviting people to take on a micro habit and really just notice what happens in your life that week when you take on that micro habit. An example of one I recently dared people to take on was for 1 week giving up eating out of bags. So in other
Oh,
words,
nice.
okay, you're going to have the tortilla chips, no problem, but not out of the bag. Put them in the bowl, eat them. And you know what? If you want a second serving, that's fine. Put them in the bowl, eat them, right? And so that was an example of a dare of the week. And really, it's just like just notice.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. That's awesome. Good.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah. And
Thank you
then you
so
can
much
also
for,
find me on Instagram at Well Empowered.
yes, thank you for sharing
Mm-hmm.
those links. I will make sure they're in the show notes and Instagram, Well Empowered as well. I've got to get over there and connect with you. So
Awesome.
cool. Dr. Haymeyer, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thanks, Nate. It has been a pleasure.
All right, there you go. We've got the link in the show notes to Dr. Haymeyer's website, wellempowered.com. And you can connect with her there, or of course, over on Instagram as well. One of the cool things is over on her website, she offers a complimentary consultation. It's free. Go check it out and explore working with her, whether your goal is weight loss or some other aspect of health improvement. Now, how did we do? Did you get to listen in for those three things that I said you were going to learn about today? Well, we need some education, right? We needed to learn about how these medications, the GLP-1 agonist medications like Ozempic, how do they work? Four main mechanisms: slowing stomach emptying, increasing feelings of being full, increasing hormones that help us to feel full or satisfied, decreasing the hormones that make us feel hungry, and then lastly, stabilizing blood sugar. That's how they work. They accomplish those four things and they bring all the benefits, whatever benefits we might have learned about, however we might have come across them, including weight loss being the benefit. That's the mechanisms, or those are the mechanisms that are going on as uh, someone's on this medication. Now, here's the thing: while someone is on the medication, those things are working, those four things are working. But after discontinuation, just as we talked about, people have to switch over to regular lifestyle habits in order to maintain whatever results that they got. To sustain those results, it has to be about habits. It has to be about making adjustments to the lifestyle. Now, number two, we talked about what we know and what we don't know. One of the things that we know as far as side effects or long-term use is nutrient deficiencies. Nutrient deficiencies in areas like iron, magnesium, zinc, omega-3 fatty acids. And there's some other things. Some users report reduced enjoyment in activities beyond just food after using the medication. So that's important to know as well. And of course, there are many unknowables because these are still newer. We don't know long term what some of the side effects or the impacts of their use will be. We just have to wait and see. So it's good to go into this if you're considering using one of these medications or a doctor has been encouraging you to do it, understanding what is going on, how they work, and then also some of the things to pay attention to as they're being used so that those side effects can have as limited of a negative effect on you as possible. And then number three, we talked about the ways and the number one way, the most important way that we can replicate those key mechanisms of the GLP-1 medications naturally. We talked about that. I know you're going to remember that, and I think it's awesome that we can frame it up this way. But basically, it's not all that amazing, is it? Eating whole foods is the answer, right? And of course, specifically fiber intake, right? So we're going to talk about that in a moment as an action step, but also other things we can do: proper sleep, and then of course managing the blood sugar management, those natural approaches. They can support someone while they're on the medication. They can create a sustainable off ramp to after using the medication, or perhaps those adjustments that they need, since they'll need to be made anyway, are something that can be considered, attempted, and even successfully implemented instead of the use of one of those medications. And again, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I am not a doctor. That's why I have people like Dr. Haymeyer on the podcast. All I want to do is right with you, learn as much as I can, and then pass it on, share it, benefit it myself, of course, so that I can share the information that I've picked up, but also use it to continue to help you and the rest of the Begin Within Health Show community. Now, action step. I know you want an action step. Here it is. And we have had this, or at least one similar, in the past, probably multiple times. But what I want to encourage you to do is take a look at fiber intake, grams per day, right? And where are we shooting for? About that 30 grams per day mark as an initial target. Now, again, Dr. H mentioned something really important. Let's start small. Let's start easy. Let's gradually increase this. Otherwise, there might be some unpleasant side effects as well from over overdoing it with fiber too quickly, right? Let's give our body some time to adjust and adapt. So start making some swaps, things like black rice instead of white rice, using bean-based pasta instead of regular pasta, adding fibrous, I might say supplements, right? Flax meal or chia seeds to meals, those types of things we can start doing. And what I would encourage you to do is just take a look. Just look, just count up the grams that you have in a day, and estimation is fine. How did I do? Most of us are going to find that we are drastically below that threshold that we talked about. And then we start finding ways to slowly increase it, make some of these swaps. So my first action step for you to I would encourage you to do, just take a look at where you're at. You got to gauge where it is, assess where you're at. We do this sometimes by like stepping on the scale and then, you know, let the feelings come. But how about this? What if instead of stepping on the scale, we take a look at our fiber intake and see where we're at there, and then gradually increase it, knowing the mechanisms that we're after that are going to support not just weight loss, but of course, health in general. I want to thank you for being here with me. I want to thank you. I haven't done this in a little while, and I probably should do it more because it's something that I think is super important. And that is for me to thank you for being someone who is in the process of becoming better, becoming a better version of yourself, becoming a healthier version of yourself. I know that's why you're here. I want to celebrate you for being that type of person, because there aren't enough of you there aren't enough people like you out there. There are not enough. So keep up the good work. And anything I can do to support you, I'm here. Keep taking good care of yourself. I'll talk with you again soon.